A lifelong love. The story of John and Mary Love is often spoken of in poems and novels as something fleeting, fragile, and bound to fade. But sometimes real life offers us stories more powerful than fiction. Stories of two people who choose each other not only in moments of joy, but in the long years of struggle, sacrifice, and change. This is the story of John and Mary, an ordinary American couple whose love has lasted more than 50 years. It was the summer of 1968, a time of change in America. The world seemed both uncertain and exciting. John was 20, a young man with strong hands from working in a carpenter's shop. He was not wealthy, not famous, but he carried within him a quiet determination. Mary was 18, a bright-eyed girl who dreamed of becoming a teacher. That summer at a church dance, fate brought them together. John later recalled, "I walked into the hall and saw her across the room. The music was loud, people were laughing, but for me, the whole world stood still. I knew that smile would stay with me forever." Their first conversation was awkward and simple. They talked about music, about books, about dreams for the future. But something in their voices lingered. That night, when John walked Mary home, he promised to write her a letter. And he kept that promise. There were no cell phones, no internet, no instant communication. Their love grew through letters. Long, thoughtful letters filled with details of their days, their hopes, their worries. Each envelope carried not just ink, but longing. Mary would sit by her window waiting for the mailman, heart racing whenever she saw John's handwriting. John, on his breaks at the workshop, would imagine her reading his words, smiling at his clumsy jokes. The distance between them only deepened their bond. Love, they realized, was not just about being together physically. It was about being present in each other's hearts, even in silence. In 1971, John returned after serving in the military. He came back thinner, a little older, but with the same steady eyes. He carried with him a small wooden box he had carved himself, and inside it a ring. Their wedding was not a grand event. It took place in Mary's backyard, under a tree decorated with strings of lights. Family and friends gathered, bringing homemade food, laughter, and blessings. Mary wore a simple white dress borrowed from her cousin. John wore his best shirt. As they stood before the minister, John held Mary's hands and whispered, "No matter what happens, I will never let go of your hand." Those words would become the foundation of their life together. The little blue house they bought was modest, with peeling paint and creaky floors. Money was tight. John worked long hours in his shop, while Mary began teaching at the local elementary school. The stress of bills and responsibilities sometimes led to arguments. There were nights when John sat silently on the porch, frustrated, and Mary cried alone in the kitchen. But each time, they found their way back to one another. They learned that love was not just passion or romance. Love was a choice, choosing to stay, choosing to forgive, choosing to keep walking together, even when the path grew hard. Their joy multiplied when they welcomed two children, Sarah and Michael. The house rang with laughter, tiny footsteps, and bedtime stories. Mary baked cookies on weekends, and John built wooden toys in his workshop. But life also tested them. When Sarah was only 8 years old, she fell seriously ill. Weeks turned into months in the hospital. Mary spent sleepless nights by her daughter's bed, whispering prayers. John took extra shifts to pay the bills, his heart heavy with fear. One night, Mary broke down and whispered to John, "I don't know if we can get through this." John, exhausted but steadfast, took her hand and said, "We will, together." Miraculously, Sarah recovered. That chapter of fear and struggle only tightened the threads that bound their family. As years passed, romance took quieter forms. Their love was no longer candlelit dinners or long walks under the stars, but simple, everyday gestures. John brewing Mary's coffee every morning, just the way she liked it. Mary slipping little notes into his coat pocket, reminders to wear a sweater on cold days. Evenings spent side by side in the garden, pulling weeds and planting flowers. These little acts became their language of love. They understood that marriage was not built on grand declarations, but on small kindnesses repeated every day. Decades slipped by. John's hair turned gray. Mary's steps grew slower. Their children grew up, left home, and had families of their own. When John retired after 40 years of carpentry, he struggled to adjust to the quiet days. Mary, too, found it hard to leave the classroom where she had spent most of her life. Sometimes the silence between them felt heavy. But instead of letting the distance grow, they found new rhythms. They cooked together, took evening walks, and babysat their grandchildren. And whenever Mary felt unwell or John grew irritable, he would hold her hand and say softly, "I'm still here with you." Now in their 70s, John and Mary often sit on their porch in the evenings, sipping tea while watching the sun dip below the horizon. Wrinkles line their faces, but their eyes still carry the same light they saw in each other half a century ago. Their grandchildren love to ask them the secret of their long marriage. Mary always laughs before answering, "We forgave each other quickly. We chose to love even on the days we didn't feel like it. And we never forgot to say, 'I love you and thank you.'" For them, love is not magic, not luck. It is work, it is patience, it is commitment. Epilogue, a love that lasts. John and Mary's story is not a fairy tale. There were struggles, mistakes, and tears. But there was also laughter, forgiveness, and a steady hand to hold in every storm. Their story reminds us all that true love lasts not because it is perfect, but because two people keep choosing each other, again and again, year after year. On quiet evenings, as the sun sets and they sit side by side, their silence speaks louder than words. It says, "We made it, we kept our promise, and we are still here together."